is CNN.
From Washington, Crossfire. On the left, Mike Kinsley. On the right, Oliver North. Tonight, could Quayle take control? In the Crossfire, Republican strategist Haley Barbour and Chris Matthews, Washington bureau chief of the San Francisco Examiner.
Good evening. Welcome to Crossfire. When America awoke this morning to learn that President Bush had collapsed at a dinner in Tokyo, 4 words flashed through many minds. Oh no, Dan Quayle. Bush apparently just has the flu. Quayle's problems may be more serious. According to the latest CNN Time magazine poll, just 37% of Americans believe Quayle is qualified to be president. 53% believe he is unqualified. But is Quayle getting a bum rap? By coincidence, the Washington Post is running a long-awaited series on Quayle this week, written by veteran reporters Bob Woodward and David Broder. The articles give a mixed report, but they're more favorable than Quayle's previous reputation. The vice president spent the day campaigning for his boss in New Hampshire. That's a vice president's job. The question is, can he do the president's job? Now, Haley Barbour, the White House, the Republican Party, Quayle's own handlers, of whom there are many, some of the smartest political operators around have had 3 years to try and convince the American public that this guy is qualified to be president. They've obviously failed. You're quite an accomplished spin doctor yourself. Wouldn't you say that at this point the patient is hopeless?
You know, Michael, Dan Quayle's tarnishing of his reputation at the convention in New Orleans is just the adage of Mark Twain made alive today, and that is, a lie can go halfway around the world before the truth can put his boots on. I mean, this is a guy who has suffered from the fact that his first introduction to the American people, the media said he was a draft dodger, the media said he was this, the media said it was that. These post stories that you discussed have all said, well, none of that was true. But the fact is, Quayle has spent 3 years incrementally, little by little, winning his reputation back, and he's done it mostly by being effective as vice president.
Well, we're going to get to the draft dodger question in a bit. But there have been 3 years. Now, people's reputations can be completely invented in a heck of a lot less than 3 years if there's anything there at all to work with.
Well, of course, the vice president's job is to stay out of the president's limelight. And Quayle, as Bush did for 8 years under Reagan, has done a very good job of trying to do that. He's been loyal, as Bush was loyal, but he's been a very effective vice president. People in Washington will tell you that, and these newspaper stories you're talking about by the Washington Post, not exactly Quayle fans, attest to that.
When the Washington Post says something you like, it's a great newspaper. When the Washington Post says something you don't like, it's biased and liberal.
Well, the Washington Post so rarely says something that I like, I don't have to worry about when it's a great newspaper.
I don't think that's really the issue, though, Michael. Chris, you're a reputable reporter now, but you're also a great commentator on the political scene here in Washington. You wrote a book about this town, Hardball. It seems to me that what you've got is a case here of not just the Democrats, but the media itself trying to make an issue of Dan Quayle. They've tried ever since New Orleans. They're still trying to keep the issue alive. The coverage this evening has just been phenomenal. One story right after another showing the president with a case of the flu. Isn't it just more of the Doonesbury drum beating?
Well, it is. It's difficult when you get into a fight with a cartoon character. I mean, Quayle versus Doonesbury, it's a lose-lose situation. Quayle's big problem is this. His first introduction to the American people wasn't through the press. It was the appearance he made down on the docks down there in New Orleans when he came out kind of giddy, it's kind of ridiculous looking. He's admitted that sort of implicitly. The trouble is, as vice president, you can't get to improve your image because there's no job to being vice president. When Bush became vice president, he had already established himself as a leader. When Humphrey became vice president, he was already a leader. Nixon was a national figure. Quayle started off as kind of a frat boy. He gets to be vice president, and now for 4 years he's got to do nothing but take orders. It's very hard to improve your image as vice president. He started with a lousy one, but it's nobody's fault but his, because I don't think this whole thing about draft dodging has stuck with the American people. Most people say forget about it. What makes them worry is when they think of Quayle, when they used to think of that Jack Kennedy, they think tragedy. When they think of Quayle, they think comedy. You don't have to tell a joke about Quayle. Just say his name and people laugh. Well, and that's a serious problem.
Chris, even you have admitted that this man's role has been one of competence. He's now been even addressed by the Washington Post, which is no great fan of this administration, as a man of integrity, a man who has proven himself in both the legal issues as well as deregulation. And
what's the difference between an enlisted man and an officer? And, you know, you have to be a leader. And the question is, it's very hard to be a leader as vice president. He was never a leader before he became vice president. Nobody says he was. Nobody says he was. In college, he had like a 2.0. He was never a leader in academics. He was never a leader in anything, really. He's a great golfer. But, you know, you can't make yourself a leader as vice president. That's his conundrum. Well, but you don't think he's a leader, do you? Do you think he's a leader?
Chris, I think it's very unfair to say that the guy was not a leader when he was a senator. I mean, he took one of the worst scandals of the Carter administration, CETA, and he is chairman of a committee and author of a bill, created a Job Partnership Training Act that's been very successful, praised by Democrats, even during the campaign.
By Democrats.
It was by Ted Kennedy. Let me tell you what happened. If you want to get into the question of area that I know something about.
Ted Kennedy comes out and says,
how about a telling detail? Larry Horowitz, who was aide to Ted Kennedy, invited the vice president, senator at that time, to breakfast, who was working on the subcommittee with Ted Kennedy, who controlled the operation. He said, if you want to get anything done here, why don't you play ball with us and go in with us on this bill? That's the leadership he showed. He went along with Ted Kennedy. Now, if your party wants to become the lieutenants, the deputy dogs to Ted Kennedy's legislative program, you got yourself a leader.
The very truth of it is that JPTA was a radical change from what the Democratic administration had done.
It was Ted Kennedy's bill.
If Senator Kennedy was glad to go along with that.
Let's talk about a more current thing, which Quayle is getting a bit of credit for, this legal reform, which Ali mentioned. He gave a speech, got very well received last August. In fact, it was a very good speech generally, advocating some very serious and generally good reforms. Here's what puzzles me about it. Dan Quayle was admitted to the bar in 1974. 18 years ago, for the first 17 years of his legal career, he never expressed the slightest interest in all these issues of legal reform. And then suddenly in August he gives the speech. Now, maybe I'm suspicious, Haley, but that suggests to me that this did not come from Dan Quayle. This came from his spin doctors.
I think, Mike, if you go back to the Reagan administration and their tort reform ideas of the Reagan administration, which this is the next generation of what you're describing at the Atlanta Bar Association meeting, Quayle was a supporter of that during the Reagan administration. I don't think it's accurate to say. He was not involved in it at all. Well, he didn't get to go make the lead speech at the American Bar Association because he wasn't the vice president.
You find me one word he ever said about it.
Let me come back to the real issue. The real issue isn't the real issue here one of constant attacks on competence. What I would like to...
Jay Leno? I could take on Jay Leno.
Jay Leno's just out there as a very convenient foil for the humor aspect that you raised a few moments ago. It's the same kind of thing that's been beaten for the last 3 years. And yet even the Washington Post says a man of integrity, a man of competence. I mean, what is it, Chris, that the man has to do to prove competence to you?
Well, let me suggest what he's doing that doesn't work, this thing that Haley's talking about. First of all, he comes out against career politicians. Let's face it, this guy's never had a job except being a politician. You're not supposed to applaud a guy who says, let's get rid of guys like me. Then he says, let's go after lawyers. That's the only profession he's ever had. All he can do to get credit for himself is to attack himself. He's part of his own problem.
Well, Ollie, let me just tell you one thing that's very different today about Quayle than when we started, and it's what you were talking about. Quayle gets attacked today in Washington because he's being effective. The left's agenda is being thwarted by the Competitiveness Council. It is being thwarted
He's the best thing the left ever had. He's the greatest opportunity they've ever had.
The reason time you ever heard of the Competitiveness Council, Haley Barbour?
When it became the instrument in the Bush administration that's become the conservative anchor, it stood up against regulation, and it has been a very effective thing.
This is the first time that George Bush did when he was carrying deregulation under Reagan.
That's where all of Chris's buddies are out cutting on Quayle today.
About people, the Democrats, I'll just say they're all got red shirts on, like in football, waiting to play against Quayle next time around. There's 7 big names in the Democratic Party who can't wait to run against Quayle. So don't tell me they're afraid of him.
I can't forget the day I was on here with Bob Beckel in 1987, and he was saying, boy, we can't wait to run against that wimp George Bush, that preppy, Yale-y Kenny Bunkport. And I think you may have underestimated Quayle or act like you underestimated Quayle as much as Bush.
His poll numbers are a disaster. It's not a question of underestimating.
Here's what amazes me about those polls, Haley. You know, the question is, do you think he's qualified? Now, if someone asked me, do you think George Bush or Pat Buchanan is qualified to be president, I'd say, gosh, I disagree with the guy about anything. In the case of one of them, never mind which, I don't even like him much, and it's not Pat Buchanan. But sure, he's qualified. Even people who agree with Quayle on the issues, because most people do on many issues, don't think he's qualified to be president, even qualified.
Michael, 12 years of experience in Washington, D.C. People said the same kind of thing about Harry Truman, who became one of the most courageous presidents this nation ever had.
He's had 3 years to make that case. He hasn't made it.
But Chris, I hate to agree with Chris.
Anything's possible. Anything is possible. This guy could turn up into the greatest president in history. It's possible. But where's the evidence?
I got to cut you off, Chris. listen, I got to cut you off too, Haley. Ollie bailed you out of that one. When we come back, we're going to talk about this National Guard question a little bit.
Why is it so busy at McDonald's?
It's such a good deal right now. We have 59-cent hamburgers, 69-cent cheeseburgers.
Price is low, it tastes great. Can't beat it.
You name it, we got it. People love us. Check out the prices.
How much is a cheeseburger this week at McDonald's?
69 cents.
And next week?
69 cents.
How much does a 59-cent hamburger cost?
59 cents.
Are you sure?
Yeah, you just said it. Come on down and see us. Prices are great and the food's great. You can't beat that.
Is there more pressure being in a commercial or working at McDonald's?
Being in a commercial.
You wanna accent your weight to positive, eliminate the negative. Tune in to the affirmative, the family channel, yes indeed.
Nobody captures life on the positive side like the Family Channel.
You wanna accentuate the positive, the family channel, yes indeed.
For MCI friends and family members, this card has made other calling cards too expensive to carry.
Well, I'm here to announce the first calling card trade-in in history. Call and join MCI Friends and Family. And for every calling card from another phone company you stop using, you'll get an hour of free card calling.
Up to 4 cards and get free calls for each one.
This could really catch on.
Tonight, former President Richard Nixon talks about the end of the Cold War, the controversy over JFK, the upcoming presidential race, and more. Richard Nixon tonight on Larry King Live, 9 Eastern on CNN.
Raises the specter in a lot of people's minds as to who is next in line after President Bush.
Obviously, whenever the health issue comes up, that issue of did he choose the right person reverberates in people's minds and brings back a memory that I don't think serves them well.
Welcome back to Crossfire. That was a couple of Democratic presidential candidates reacting to today's news. President Bush apparently is fine, but his dramatic collapse at a dinner in Tokyo last night raises once again the question of Dan Quayle. Is he fit to be president? We're debating that with 2 political insiders and Crossfire veterans. Chris Matthews is Washington bureau chief of the San Francisco Examiner. Long ago, he worked as a speechwriter for President Carter. Haley Barbour is a Republican political analyst and lawyer. Long ago, he was director of political affairs for Ronald Reagan. Now, Haley, I want to straighten out this draft dodger thing. Draft dodger is too strong a word, but here's what the evidence shows. This is what the Washington Post reported. He did pull strings to get a place in the National Guard. The issue, the controversy is, did he have to? And the evidence is he might not have had to. There were places in the Guard. They held those places open for the few days it took him to sign up. It might all have been unnecessary, but he didn't simply walk into the National Guard and sign up like an ordinary guy would do. Those are the facts.
Well, the absolute fact is that he joined a National Guard unit that had 11 fewer people in it than their authorized strength. And after he joined it, it had 8 fewer people in it than its authorized strength. And you people say, well, they held a position open for him. Well, who the hell the 8 other positions
Well, he wanted to make darn sure those positions were held open, and he didn't just walk in. He had his grandfather call an employee who was connected to the National Guard. That's not how you sign up for the National Guard.
Michael, that is a phony issue. It has been for 3 years. Let me tell you something. There's no dishonor in having served in the National Guard. I did serve in Vietnam. I don't have any inhibitions about saying it's an honorable thing. And if anybody doubts that, they only need to look at those who served in the National Guard in the Persian Gulf just a year ago.
There's no dishonor in serving in the National Guard. There's a certain amount of dishonor in being disingenuous about it. And there is also dishonor about being gung-ho for the war in every way except going to serve for it.
Well, now, Michael makes the point about why Quayle got criticized so much. He is somebody who made a big contribution on defense in the Senate. I mean, he is given credit with virtually single-handedly keeping the Patriot missile in the budget. And he's criticized because he was a defense expert, but was in the Guard. But nobody ever says Senator Sam Nunn is the leading defense expert for the Democrats, and he was in the Naval Reserve.
I don't really think this is... It's the question of consistency. You know, this is going to be an issue in the Democratic campaign this year. Bob Kerrey, the senator from Nebraska, is a war hero, Congressional Medal of Honor winner, lost part of his leg. He was against the war in the Persian Gulf. But the other guy, Clinton, is going to have a problem because Clinton, the front runner right now, didn't serve, took all his deferments, and he's a hawk.
Why isn't the media, instead of focusing on the fact that Dan Quayle honestly stood upright with integrity and said, I served in the National Guard during the war, why aren't they going after the Democratic presidential candidate who's lied about his military service?
Well, that was reported in the Wall Street Journal. I wrote about the Harkin-Clinton dispute. I don't agree with Michael about the whole question of how I got in. Every swell, every rich kid in this country, this is part of the problem with this country, has an angle. You know, get out of the hard work. That's what it's all about, being rich in America. So I said that's normal. I disagree with it. But you say he's somehow unique. He's a typical frat boy with tassel loafers that got his deal. Now the problem
this is a guy who has proven himself.
No. It was the whole Ollie. He would never have gone in the Army because he had an easier way out. The point is that he was a hawk. That's the one thing I agree with Michael on. Here's a hawk. You know, if I were fighting a country filled with hawks like Dan Quayle, I wouldn't worry about it because you wouldn't have to field an army because they never serve.
Well, the fact of the matter is, are we questioning now whether or not his judgment on support for the war in Vietnam or judgment on support for the war in the Persian Gulf was a good one? There's no doubt that his proficiency in defense and national security issues has contributed to the welfare of this country.
We're questioning his genuineness. And that's the issue. You raised it. I didn't bring it up.
The Patriot missile is an absolute I don't think
is he what he pretends to be? Is he truly a hawk? Is he a gung-ho gyrene type, or isn't he?
He's certainly been supportive of the national security interests of the United States. When he went to talk to the families of the veterans of the Persian Gulf War, they gave him a rousing standing ovation. They didn't treat him like he was some kind of draft dodger.
Well, I don't think he's a draft dodger.
But look, this guy is a solid expert. I mean, you question the word expert. I mean, when he was on the Senate...
The issue is not his expertise. The issue was whether he served.
Well, no, I don't agree with that. I don't agree. I was in the Peace Corps. About 90% of people didn't serve. The issue is, are you a genuine person as you present yourself? Are you truly a hawk? Are you a gung-ho, let's kick their butts in guy? Or are you basically just talking like one?
We've done this enough. Let's go back to the Competitiveness Council, because that is his claim to fame. Now, isn't it true, Haley, that as a practical matter, every White House comes up with a little something for the Vice President and a little something for the First Lady? And George Bush had the regulatory stuff, and he was supposedly head of the Anti-Terrorism Council, and he was going around saying, one thing we will never do is trade for hostages. And as Ollie knows, that turned out to be a lot of baloney. Isn't the Competitiveness Council baloney just like that?
Well, you know that it's not the way that it's attacked by the liberals in this town. The truth of the matter is the Competitiveness Council matters because what they're doing is very important to the economy. It is very important to jobs. It is very important to our ability to compete in the world. And it is controversial and tough, and Quayle has done a great job.
The most vicious attacks on Bush's regulatory policy I've seen come from Pat Buchanan, who say that because of the Clean Air Act and other stuff, there's more regulations under this guy than ever, and conservatives ought to be appalled. Now, you're a conservative. Are you appalled?
Well, the truth is Congress is trying to mandate regulation after regulation, and what they can't get in the bills, they're then trying to tell the bureaucracy, well, you have to do more, you have to do more. And Quayle is standing in the breach saying, no, we're going to implement these laws, we're going to regulate properly, but not excessively.
We're going to break our promise of not to increase the number of wetlands.
Well, actually,
decrease the number of wetlands.
Actually, the number of wetlands in this country is going to have gone up under the Bush administration as defined,
so
not down.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, that's exactly what the point is.
Chris, isn't what Haley's trying to say is the same thing keeps coming out. One time, you attack the guy for doing something right. You attack the guy for not doing something else. It's just one constant attack after another.
Well, I haven't done any of these things except to say that the American people made a judgment about him. That judgment stands. And all this intricacy and exhaustive reporting by the Washington Post, all you have to do is pull back the camera and look at him. That's the problem. The problem is people don't see a leader there. That's the problem. Not that he doesn't do his seat work in class and doesn't have perfect attendance or he doesn't obey the president. It's because he doesn't appear to be a leader.
Isn't that because of the impression the press has tried to create with
Look, when you were in the service, did you have to have good press to have people know you're a leader?
I prayed for days without any press.
Did you just, no, that's right. Because people could tell a leader when they saw one. How come in this new line of work you need to have a PR campaign to build up a guy's image?
Now, wait a minute, Chris.
It's not.
You know yourself that the vice president cannot, should not try to supersede the president. You're talking about showing leadership as vice president.
We've had vice presidents who've looked very good, actually, because of the way the men they are, like Hubert Humphrey, and they have looked. And George Bush, George Bush's numbers didn't go down as
we're going to have to take. We got to take a break, Haley. But when we come back, we'll ask Chris what it's going to take to make the press change their attitude about Vice President Quayle. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Susan Rook. At the top of the hour on Prime News, the latest on the president's illness in Tokyo with a live report from CNN's Charles Bierbauer. A U.S. automaker finally has at least one thing to cheer about, and the new poor of St. Petersburg. People struggle for a new start after communism. All on Prime News, right after Crossfire.
American Express now gives you an easy way to apply for membership. All you have to do is call.
Can I apply for the card over the phone?
Yes, you can. All I'll need is some information.
Great.
For those who qualify, the card comes with a world of privileges. Privileges that give you an extra measure of financial flexibility.
Do you like it?
I love it.
Then we'll take it.
Privileges that extend the free repair period offered under most manufacturers' warranties. Privileges that include help when you need it.
American Express, I lost my wallet, my cash, and all my cards.
We can have another card for you by tomorrow. American Express?
To apply, simply call 1-800-THE-CARD. We'll take your application over the phone and start processing it right away.
That was so easy. Thank you. And thank you for calling American Express. On the card, sir?
No need to wrap it. Membership has its privileges, so call 1-800-THE-CARD now.
A cold always starts small, but before you know it, your cold is full grown. That's when you need Dimetap. If it was any stronger, you'd need a prescription. Dimetap Extend Tabs work for 12 full hours. It's the way to relieve the congestion and sneezing of a full-grown cold. Maximum strength Dimetap Extend Tabs. Relief for the full-grown cold. And for colds and flu with fever, now there's Dimetap Cold and Flu.
Live so comfortable. On sale now.
Yoplait, low fat, calcium rich, with active yogurt cultures. It's something 40-year-old Vicky Gentry does every day. Smooth, creamy Yoplait. Do it for you.
A little breaking news here. Governor Wilder of Virginia has dropped out of the presidential race, and there'll be more information about that at the news at the top of the hour. Take it away, Ollie.
Michael, that's good news for the state of Virginia. We've needed a governor for many months. It makes one wonder if he's dropped out simply because the vice president's on the show here.
Wilder for president.
Chris, let me ask you something. As a respected journalist, as a man who reports on what goes on in this town, it seems to me that what we're seeing is the economy on the mend. We're going to see a drastically
You're an optimist, Ollie.
Not an optimist. I'm a realist.
All right.
The economy is going to be drastically improved by October, and the only issue that the Democrats have left, and the support of the left in the media, is Dan Quayle.
Well, they have a larger question of what's the role of the U.S. government, which is in question. I think Quayle can solve his own problem. To answer a question you brought up before, you know, when Clinton got in trouble in 1988 by giving a turkey of a speech at the Democratic Convention and being laughed at by all the comedians, what did he do? He went to the Carson show and stood up to Carson, told a couple jokes, was self-deprecating, played the sax, showed he was a guy who could communicate. For some reason, Dan Quayle's people have kept him from really trying to do that. He doesn't hit all the talk shows. He doesn't talk to people. You know, the problem is, I asked him about the deer in the headlights problem. I said, every time you look at the camera, people see a deer stuck in the headlights. Can you fix that? Don't look at the camera. Talk to Larry King or whoever you're with. He says, because my eyes are sensitive. You know, people have to judge what they see, and what they see is the deer stuck in the headlights. And until he solves that problem, he can be on the Competitive Council, he can do the Job Partnership Act every year, and that's the problem.
Because substance, I still believe, is more important than form.
People don't get to see the inside
I agree with Ollie that substance is more important than form, but I think Quayle's problems go deeper than learning how to look in the headlights. Well, let me ask you the question I asked you 6 months ago, Haley, and see if you've got any better answer than you had 6 months ago. If you could go back until 1980 to 1988 and advise George Bush, wouldn't you advise him to pick someone else?
I think Quayle has been an asset to this administration, and I don't think he hurt him in the '88 campaign. One last point. He cannot change overnight the damage unfairly done to him in New Orleans in '88, and he's smart not to try. Smart for his own account, and it would be unfair to George Bush for him to try to get out of George Bush's
That's
shadow.
it. You got the last word. Thanks, Haley. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Mike.
Ollie and I will have some
Ollie.
final thoughts in just a moment.
Only one gum passes the test when you've got dental work.
And that's Freedent. Freedent won't stick to your dental work, so you can be confident chewing it. And because it also moistens your mouth and freshens your breath, Freedent's in a class by itself.
Freedent's the one that took the stick out of gum, and Freedent moistens your mouth. Yeah, moistens your mouth and freshens your breath while you chew.
Non-stick Freedent moistens your mouth and freshens your breath.
This is ordinary bulk fiber. It's full of grit. This is new Sunrise Smooth Metamucil. The grit is gone because it's triple ground for smoothness. This is ordinary fiber. The grit is definitely not gone. This is new Sunrise Smooth Metamucil, the best mixing, smoothest tasting natural fiber you can buy. The grit is gone. New Sunrise Smooth Metamucil. For regularity, nothing works better. And the grit is gone.
Oh, boy. Somebody must think we're special because we got Post Raisin Bran. It's premium.
Premium?
It tastes great, right? Because Post only picks the big, plump raisins, not little ones.
No way.
Those big, crispy flakes. Look close.
Looks bumpy.
Well, that's a natural whole wheat in the wheat bran. Somebody sure must think we're special.
It's our mommy.
Post Raisin Bran. It's premium, and that makes everybody feel like somebody special.
My role will not just be that of a moderator, but a participant. You really never know what you'll see or hear because it's unrehearsed.
People come out of prison, repeat their crimes at an 80% level.
It's called real TV.
Ollie, this Washington Post series that got discussed here, I don't know if people are reading it. I don't know if you've read it. It does not present Dan Quayle as any towering genius or great leader or anything like that. It merely says, he's competent, he's done some things okay, he's done some things badly. It's a mixed bag. It's hardly an endorsement.
One doesn't look for endorsements from the Washington Post unless you're Michael Kinsley. What I see is a Post series that has presented the man as effective, as competent, as a man of integrity, and a leader.
A man, what do you mean by man of integrity? You mean he's honest? Is that what we want from a vice president or president?
We could get less from presidential candidates who are running today.
The last crooked vice president was a Republican.
Service. Well, I would say to you that you yourself have commended the man for the work he's done as generally good on legal reform.
No, I said he gave a good speech written by someone else. For the left, I'm Mike Kinsley. Good night for Crossfire.
And from the right, I'm Oliver North.
Join us tomorrow for another edition of Crossfire. And Prime News is next. Let's get a look at the headlines. Here's Bernard Shaw.
Thank you, Michael. President Bush recovers from his bout with stomach flu. We'll have a live report from Tokyo with the latest on the president's health and on his trade mission to Japan. And this just in, Virginia Governor Douglas Wilder is dropping out of the race as the field of Democratic presidential hopefuls grows smaller. And in the Republic of Georgia, tensions continue between new military leaders and supporters of the ousted president. Prime News is next.
Coming up, Prime News, followed by Larry King Live after a word from your local cable system here on CNN.
Hobby enthusiasts of all kinds, from beginners to professionals, can find it all at Hobby Haven. It's the area's most complete selection of trains, airplanes, cars, and boats, plus paints, accessories, and more. Our knowledgeable staff will locate what you're looking for, answer your questions, and share their expertise. Since 1973, Hobby Haven has offered a tremendous variety of stock and a commitment to the public that keeps customers coming back time and again. Hobby Haven, located in Sherwood Forest Shopping Center.
If you're as old as this car, have we got a deal for you? You see, when you insure your car with shelter insurance, you may qualify for preferred rates for those 48 and over. With the Platinum Shield, you'll get the same personal service you've come to expect.
Here are 3 reasons why you should advertise your product on cable television in Des Moines. Number 1, you'll reach your customers if they're men, women, or children. Number 2, you can buy television commercials on any of 16 Heritage Cablevision channels. Number 3, and best of all, a 30-second commercial costs as little as $35. Call Heritage Advertising Sales today. Cable television advertising. It's affordable and it's effective. 1,000!
1,050 people on the line. 1,050 people on the line right now.
This is a deal.
At this very moment, you could be missing out on the most remarkable sales event ever. A home shopping club.